Hello, AP Psychology students. We have two more neurotransmitters to look at, and then the endocrine system. So endorphins are a very important chemical that our body produces to help us to alleviate pain when we encounter an emergency. So let's say in the immediate aftermath of an injury, you might recall that you didn't feel what you would expect to feel. I know that once I got pushed into a pool, it was in junior high, and my leg, my shin burst open, and I just didn't even notice anything. I didn't feel anything until my swim coach said to me, "Oh my gosh, you are bleeding." And I looked down and like blood is like squirting out of my leg. And the reason why I didn't feel it at the time is because the endorphins were rushing to that site so that I could get help. Now, that is one of the effects of endorphins. Another effect is that it produces pleasurable emotions, including something called the runner's high. Now, those of you who are actually runners or who do intense sports, even like ultimate frisbee or whatever, know that feeling of just my students describe it to me as like walking or running on clouds, and you get that extra push that you need to do the race or the athletic activity that you're trying to complete. I've never had that experience myself. I don't do intense sports, but I've heard it described often enough to believe that it exists. The endorphins are interesting because they resemble opiates in structure and function. Opiates are they are drugs that are derived from the inside of the poppy plant. The use of opium has been around for centuries, and even if we go to the 19th century, there was a whole couple of wars fought over it called the Opium Wars in China. So we know that opiates can be very addicting. There are several agonists for endorphins, including morphine, which is used in medicine. Oxycontin and Vicodin are often used post wisdom tooth removal. That's when a lot of my students have had exposure to them. Codeine might be used after surgery. Fentanyl is actually used in surgery as a sedative. And then heroin is often mixed with fentanyl now, and sadly has led to somewhat of what we call an opioid crisis here in the United States, especially with a mix of heroin and fentanyl. There have been several overdoses. I personally know of two young men who passed away from a heroin and fentanyl overdose. And then these other two people here, Corey Monteith and Philip Seymour Hoffman, also passed away from heroin and or fentanyl. So these drugs are very addictive. They're very important for treatment, but they can be very addictive. There is an antagonist called naloxone. This is used for overdoses. EMTs, paramedics will have this, police officers, if they suspect an opiate overdose. The next one, glutamate. Glutamate is involved in memory. Now, we know a couple of reactions to glutamate if you have an agonist. One well-known agonist is MSG. MSG is a spice that is used in some foods. I've had students whose parents own restaurants and they use monosodium glutamate in their cooking. My own husband had a very bad reaction to MSG when we were just newly married, and he was speaking incoherently. I called his father, who's a physician. He asked what we ate, and he said, "Well, I think he might have had some MSG. See how he is after a couple of hours." And thankfully, he was fine. An antagonist, if you have alcohol and you cannot remember what happened the night before, well, there are a couple things we've already talked about that alcohol works along with. Well, it also blocks glutamate. So alcohol is a glutamate antagonist and a GABA agonist. The two of them together make it so that you have a hard time forming memories if you have too much alcohol. I do have a YouTube video here that I will link online. I'm not going to play it right now, but it shows how alcohol and glutamate how glutamate and GABA are both affected by the use of alcohol. So what I'd like you to do, and this is for the students that are at home today, for your ABA, choose one of these two activities. Now that's actually Case Keenum, not not cousins, and that's a random person that I don't know. But choose either the quarterback football player or the student who's attentive and raising their hand, and pick 4 neurotransmitters particularly active for either the football player or for the girl raising her hand in class, and how they might be helping that person. So, for example, would the glutamate be particularly active and why? So just pause, answer that for your ABA today. But I do have 2 more slides left. Okay, the last thing in this part of the unit is the endocrine system, and then we're going to get to the brain, which I really am excited about. The endocrine system is a set of glands that secretes hormones. As you can see on this picture, we have hormone glands throughout our bodies, the pituitary, the thyroid, pancreas, adrenal glands, etc. So hormones are actually chemicals that travel through the bloodstream. Remember, neurotransmitters travel from the terminal button to the receptor molecule of the dendrite. Hormones are going to be released into your bloodstream, so they're going to be slower acting than neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are very, very quick, very rapid transfer of neurotransmitters, not so for hormones. So the brain, the hypothalamus is kind of like our central of homeostasis. And attached to the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, as you can see on this picture here, secretes many different hormones, some of which affect other glands. And these other glands send messages to the brain and so forth. It's kind of like a loop. Now, I'm not going to be talking too much about the other glands, but let me just highlight a couple. First of all, I've already talked about the pituitary attached to the hypothalamus. This is the master gland that controls the other glands. An important gland is the adrenal gland. This sits on top of the kidneys, so we have 2 adrenal glands. And just like with the kidneys, if you have a tumor and you need to lose one of your adrenal glands and your kidney, you will still be fine. I mean, there are potentially long-term consequences for that, but you can survive with just one adrenal gland. They produce both epinephrine and norepinephrine, and this chemical, as you know, acts as both a neurotransmitter and also a hormone. So this is the reason why when the fight or flight kicks in, you're going to feel the immediate action of the neurotransmitter, getting your body ready to respond to the emergency, whatever that may be. But you're going to feel an after effect as well because of the hormone that's released through the bloodstream. So it's going to take you a while to calm down. Even after the neurotransmitter has stopped being produced, the effects of the hormone continue in your system. So this hormone is really important in assisting in the fight or flight response. So the thyroid glands, these affect metabolism, and problems with the thyroid glands can affect your mental state. They can cause some varieties of depression and things like that. But this is really all you need to know for the purposes of this class. Now, the next thing that we'll be looking at is the brain. I have a Phineas Gage video for you to watch, and this just highlights some of the things we're going to be learning about, some of the specialization of different parts of the brain. And you're going to be watching on your asynchronous day a video of the recreation of the story of Phineas Gage and his remarkable story of surviving this iron rod going through his cheek and out the back of his head. And you're going to report on what he indeed experienced as a result of that incredible injury and survival. So have a great day. Thanks for your attention.